you have any questions? I was listening in on a couple of groups, and you were finding lots of interesting ways to play with this stuff. This is only beginning, but I don't want to make this too long a seminar. So we only have 3 days together. You could spend hours doing this, right? Do you have any questions, though? Yes?
I couldn't make my images color.
Couldn't make them color. Ah, okay. Well, that would certainly add to it. Well, actually, you can do other things, too. Sometimes a contrasting image of black and white is even more impactful to some people than color images. But you could try, for instance, looking at this yellow shirt here, and look at it, and then close your eyes and bring the color inside. That's pretty easy with that, isn't it? And then you could take some subtler. Well, I wanted to make it easy for you. But when you get that one, then you take the blue is pretty bright too, but not quite so bright. And then you gradually get little subtler colors in there. Yeah, it's just, see, all we're doing when we have our internal experiences of color is taking our external experiences and remembering them. It's really all we're doing. We're utilizing the experiences that we've had, and then once we've got them in here, we can change them around in our little laboratory.
And the database, I couldn't see them all. I saw the first one, but then one after the other, and one is laying down, and then one after the other.
Okay. What's different about the one that's lying down?
I could see somebody there, but not clear.
Okay, you can see a little more of that then? Uh-huh, interesting. Well, see, all these wonderful things that people are doing in their mind, and the more clients you have and you use this with, the more you get to figure out how to organize your brain. Piaget has a wonderful quote. He was a child psychologist long ago. Said, the brain organizes the world by organizing itself. It's really true. That's how we organize our world. It's by organizing what's in here. And there are lots of different ways of organizing them. Now, with Paul here, he has a random access, big picture comes up. He doesn't know quite from where. And I was trying to suggest something about combining sequential so that you have some idea of the number of things. And so I suggested having a collage, maybe, I don't know, I'm probably gestured about 6 feet away. And that was too close. It was too busy. There was all this movement going on, and it was too much input. And usually when people are in what was called overwhelm, they're getting too much input of some kind. And you can reduce the amount of input per second by slowing down tempo, or you can reduce the amount of input by pushing an image farther away, or by making it smaller so you don't see as much. Then you don't get quite as much data all at once. So I suggested moving it away so it's over here maybe so it's a little dimmer and darker and not quite as prominent, but still give them a sense of the overall number of examples. Am I not? What's it? What's the problem? Well, don't wave at me then. We can cut this out later, I guess. Was I going like this too much or something? Okay. Well, maybe I miscued. Anyway, all of these things, here's some, go ahead.
Yeah, what I wanted to say also is that what's interesting too is that I'm just kind of examining that, is that the collage needs to be slightly off to the right and further back. My sequential random needs to be out here.
Right.
And if I try moving either one of those into a different space,
doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
Well, location is tremendously important, and it differs for different people. It's just, I don't have any rules on location. I don't know why. Maybe just one of those random things we just learned how to do, and it's familiar, so we go with it. I guess I could offer one generalization. If something is generally speaking right in front of you, you're going to pay more attention to it. If it's off to the side, you won't notice it as much. But other than that, people have lots of different ways. Yes?
Do we ever lead with our kinesthetic, or is the kinesthetic always a response to auditory and visual?
Well, it depends on which kinesthetic you're talking about. Athletes lead kinesthetically with the feeling of their body. And for instance, when an athlete is learning a new skill, they will see somebody else do the new skill or the sport. They'll put their body into the shape of that other person's body, and they'll lead kinesthetically that way. But that's using the proprioceptive and tactile kinesthetics, these kinds. The feeling kinesthetics are always a result of the emotional evaluative feeling kinesthetics are always a result of something else.
I'm thinking, for instance, my wife is a realtor.
Okay.
She would go into a house, and I could ask her, about the house years ago, and she could remember it. If I go into someone's house, and I would come home and say I was in someone's home, and she would say, "What did it look like?" I have no idea.
Okay.
Because when I have gone into the house, I'm sort of getting a feel for the house, not the way it looks. And I don't know, maybe I'm looking and I'm getting the feeling from the looking. I don't know what's going on.
Well, you could have the feelings of walking through all the rooms. You could have the echoes of the sound of your footsteps. You could have it auditorily, or you can have it visually. It's a matter of what you're paying attention to. And all of us tend to be a little bit specialized. Some people are a lot specialized, and then some people are a little more, quote, ambidextrous in that they pay more or less equal attention to all three. And whatever you're not so strong in, you can enhance by practice. I'm essentially an auditory idiot. I never had any musical training. I didn't have to learn an Asian language where you really have to learn those different tones. So I don't have very good auditory acuity, but I've developed quite a bit over the years. So I can hear the changes in people's voice tone now when they shift states and things like that, which is things I was essentially ignorant of before. So it's a matter of what are you paying attention to. Your brain doesn't, the visual part of your brain doesn't go to sleep just because you're paying attention to kinesthetics or auditory. It's still functioning. It's a matter of how much of that emerges into your awareness.
And this question is sort of connected when the representative image, and I got into there associated almost immediately. But with that came a kinesthetic experience of familiarity.
Yes.
I have been here before.
Right.
And I don't know if I'm reviewing other images, or is it, I don't know how that's happening exactly.
You get when you're walking down the street and you see a lot of faces and then you see somebody you know, that feeling of familiarity comes from having seen them before. You have some kind of database in there of seeing them in lots of different contexts, preferably. Lots of different expressions, different activities, and so on. So there's a match between the experience you're having in the moment and some kind of database that you've got in there. And that gives you a feeling of familiarity. Sometimes you can develop this quite rapidly. Often when people make changes in self-concept, they'll say, "I don't feel like myself." Have you ever heard that? In fact, sometimes you'll hear this even when you weren't intending to make a change in self-concept. "I don't feel like myself." What do you want to ask then? Huh? No, I wouldn't say that. I'd say, is this okay? Do you have any objections? Basically, ecology check. Is it okay to be somebody else? Would it be all right to be this new person? Is it okay to be somebody with different attitudes, different perceptions, so on? But that's wonderful news. It means you've made a change that really made a difference, made a change in self-concept. Okay. Now, fundamentally, the more information you got in there, the more solid you can be about that quality. If you've only done something once in your life, would you feel very solid about it? No, you only have one example. If you have 10 examples, then you can say, "Oh, this is familiar. I've done this in lots of different contexts, different people, blah, 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 whatever." Then that feels more solid to you. And this is, of course, represented in your database. Now I want to direct your attention to a slightly different question, and that is the notion of feedback. This list of things that we've been working with, how do those relate to feedback? And you have to kind of take a little different view of things in order to do this. What I've been asking you to do is simply represent your database, make some change in your database. How does that change your feeling? Now I need to take a larger picture. And the larger picture goes like this. Given whatever mechanism you have in there for knowing who you are in terms of this aspect of yourself, how will these different things affect feedback? If you have a large number of images or voices or feelings in there, will that make for better feedback or worse?
You mean for receiving feedback?
For noticing when your behavior matches or mismatches. Takes a little different point of view to answer this question. Let's say, for instance, I have two people, and one of them has a database that's got that many images in it. This is just something to point at. And somebody else has a database that has many, 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 many more examples of kindness or tenacity or loving or whatever it is. Which one of these people will be more likely to notice when their behavior matches or mismatches?
Yes, less.
Okay, why the one with less?
There's so much more to examine in the other one.
It'd take you a little longer, that's
Right.
true.
Doesn't it really depend on our meta program? Or how we, like you mentioned about getting overwhelmed, for example.
Uh-huh.
Are we seeing all these hundreds of examples as useful data, or are we feeling overwhelmed by
Uh-huh.
noticing them?
Yeah. Well, it will take longer if you consult a larger database. Let me simplify it greatly. Let's say you have one example of Q for quality. Given that this quality could be expressed in hundreds and thousands of different ways, say kindness, you can be kind visually, you can be kind auditorily with a soft tone of voice, you can be kind kinesthetically by touching. If you just had one image of this, and the image can also have auditory and kinesthetic with it, you can step into it and get that. If you had only one image of what this quality is, you wouldn't have a very good database for knowing whether you were doing this or not, would you?
Right.
But if you have a huge database with lots of different examples in different contexts, with different people doing different activities, et cetera, you have a much more, think of an expert in any field. Expert in any field, whatever it is, with bartending or beekeeping or computer programming, if you have lots and lots and lots of examples, you have a much richer database to know what's going on and to recognize, oh yeah, I'm meeting that as well. Here I'm meeting it in this way. Here I'm meeting it in another way. Here I'm satisfying it in another way, and so on and so on and so on. And then you're in the real world and you do a new thing. So this is, this is behavior. In a moment in time, you're behaving in a particular way. Here you have lots and lots of stuff to match to. Because you have a rich, finely detailed database. And so the more examples you have in there, the better you can really make fine distinctions or really notice whether you're doing that quality or not.
I got a rather interesting question. Let's say, I don't know, the quality of bartending, whatever the case might be, isn't that also composed of other categories as well?
Of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's the logical levels game. There are categories of categories of categories of categories. And some categories overlap and some don't overlap and so on and so on. For now, let's keep it simple and just say there's this quality of, let's say, attentiveness in barkeeping.
Okay.
Of attending to your customers and making them feel at home or making them feel like they want to buy another drink or whatever it is. That you can do in a lot of different ways, right?
Yeah.
And you can think of thousands, right?
Lots, yeah.
How to talk to them, how to notice, match their head nods, rapport.
Makes an amazing difference.
Yeah, of course. So whatever it is, that you can have that quality, and you have a rich, rich, rich database.
Finally,
Whatever. Okay.
Another one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's not go into the content. The point I want to make is this. The richer your database is, the more examples you have in there, the better the feedback. Because if you do a specific behavior and you look through all of this thing and you go, boy, it didn't match any of those. Oops, am I really that kind of person or not? And this was something I absolutely did not expect. I thought, see, stability or durability or solidity or whatever you want to call it is enhanced by having a large number, whether you have them sequentially or simultaneously. And feedback is enhanced by the same thing. And I didn't expect this. I thought there would be certain mechanisms in there that would make a self-concept strong, and that would have to be balanced by something to make it open to feedback. And I was so happy to be wrong. So happy to be wrong. All of the things that make for durability also make for feedback.
And maybe it goes back to your representation about people who think they are good at something but aren't.
Okay?
So here people have collected, and I don't know how we did, I don't even know if if you discovered this in your exploration. It seems to me I've met people who think they are a certain way, and the people around them don't find them that way.
Right.
And they try to give feedback about that.
Yeah.
But the feedback doesn't go in, and I was just supposing it's because they've created a lot of representations that that's not the way they are.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think that's the case, and we will get to this. I think it's more a case of ambiguity and having to do with counterexamples, which we'll get to tomorrow. And I agree with you on the phenomena that happens, and it's only the explanation of how it happens. And feel free to disagree with me, but tomorrow I'll present my slant on it. So the brighter the pictures are in here, the clearer they are, the bigger they are, the more things you will have to compare with behavior and keep yourself on track. Yeah?
Yeah, kind of what I was responding to was, would it not be better, but maybe another strategy to access the databases? It's better to have the large database. The more experiences
Right.
To have for comparison is totally agreeable. What I have a problem with is trying to get something out of such a huge database. And I was thinking, well, just focus on something that's within that database, a certain section of it, and if it matches, it contains some of the other ones. Then I could examine the other ones out there. Because as Ann said, I may have a tendency to become sensory input overwhelmed.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't seem to happen this way. You know, if you think you're a kind person and you do something where you interact with somebody else and they frown, you probably notice it. That doesn't fit with this database. And you don't really have to go through sorting through every little picture to know that that doesn't quite fit. That doesn't, what's going on here? At least ask a question to find out what's going on. Maybe they just stepped on a thumbtack. You know, maybe it doesn't have to do with your interaction, but still it's a signal to be investigated. And that's all you need for feedback is say, hey, to notice something, there's some kind of cue, there's some kind of signal, I need to check it out and find out if it's what I think it is or if it's something else. And the more data you have in there, the better able you are to do that. And the brighter and the bigger and all the rest of it, it's all ways of getting your attention. Any other questions on this? Yes?
What happens if you've got a strong feeling about this quality, but you can't find out examples? Or maybe you've got just one or two examples.
But you have a strong feeling that you have this quality, and you can only find a few examples?
Yeah. And when I tried to find out more examples, I was frustrated because I felt myself weaker. I mean,
Okay.
I had doubt about my qualities.
Let me offer a possibility and see if it fits for you. Sometimes people have very high standards for equality. Is that true for you? Then you'll only have a few examples. Okay?
Yeah,
Does that fit?
That for me
I mean, if it's something like madly in love or absolute supreme perfection of whatever it is, then you're only going to have a few examples. Now, sometimes that's entirely appropriate. At other times, it might be good to look at your criteria and say, well, maybe I should relax this a little bit. In doing reframing, 6-step reframing, when we used to teach that, there's this whole thing of, go to the creative part of yourself. And a lot of people don't think they have a creative part, because for them, creativity is Beethoven and Monet and, just these paragons and Einstein and so on like that. Only these top people are creative. And I always try to loosen their criteria and say, well, have you ever made up a shopping list in a different order? Or have you ever gone to your work using a different pathway, so on like that, so that I use the same word to encompass a larger group of experiences. But if you have very high standards and that's appropriate, then it's wonderful. You only have a few examples. Okay? That's the case for you, right? I guessed right? Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. So now you can feel okay about it, right? Well, yeah, you all understand. If your criteria are high, then only a few things meet. Only a few examples will fit. Criteria are lower, anything can fit, and that can be a problem. I know one gal who, if a man opened a door for her or was polite to her in any way, she assumed this was a showing of love. And she started imagining marrying him and stuff like that. So as you can imagine, this was not very useful for her. She too easy, so to speak, because almost anything would fit into her definition of love. So depending on your outcomes and depending on the context and all the rest, sometimes it's good to have very high criteria, sometimes very low. If you have lots of choices of restaurant, it makes sense to have a very, very high criteria and pick the best one or the cheapest or whatever your criteria are. If you're on a road trip through the middle of Nevada and you're hungry, you better lower your criteria. Because that hamburger may not look much like a hamburger. So adjusting criteria is a whole other thing. Anyway, do you have any questions about the feedback thing? And I'm making this huge generalization that everything that you do that will make your self-concept stronger will also make it more responsive to feedback.
About the structure could influence, you have a number of examples, but the way they're set up, that it would be hard to match or mismatch.
Absolutely. Sure. If you have just a great big bucket of stuff, it's going to be harder to match or mismatch. If you have some subcategories in there, like you were talking about subcategories of things, that makes it simpler. Because then you can go down a sort of a decision tree and use the larger categories to sort the smaller examples and so on. So sure, that will always be the case. See, this is how we generalize. And it's actually fairly simple. Yeah.
I also found that when I was looking into the database, I found the quality I was talking about in some cases changing to another quality.
Okay.
And that was sort of, okay, actually now the picture's a star, so it's like connected to another one, and I'm starting to get a picture like that.
Okay. Yeah. Sometimes you examine the database and you find stuff in there that doesn't belong there at all. Belongs in another database. Or maybe it belongs in a junk pile or something like that. Typically, you have some examples in your database are sort of very sterling examples. They're very strong examples, and others are not so strong. And we'll talk about those a little bit later, too. Okay. Any other questions about what we've just done and the notion of the feedback? And the richer your database in all ways, the better the feedback.
From here, I could see every picture, but mine is one after the other, and I only see the first one.
Right.
How would I respond to feedback?
Well, there's some part of you that knows what's in those other pictures. And, unconscious mind works in strange ways. But we can facilitate that by seeing a little bit of the picture. So, you see, there's a whole range of variation. If you see only the first picture, this one you can see in lots of detail because it's big and it's it's easy to see. If you see only the edge of the other picture, you only know that it's in the same category. You don't really know what's in that picture. You can have a rapid way of cycling through. A couple of you have talked about that, where it's, you've talked about a random access, where it's boom, 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 like that. So you can cycle through a lot of them, and you can think of them as just, you can peel off this top one and see the next one. You can peel off the next one and see the next one. There are a million ways to do this. Or you can have what do you call it? A workstation, and those pictures just pop in automatically on like on a computer workstation. If you have it a little more, maybe you can actually see a little bit of the content, and that can give you an idea of what's there. And that can give you a more idea faster. So if you spread them out, and of course if you spread them out completely, then you have a collage or something like this, where you can basically see them all at once. You don't see any one of them very clearly, but you have a sense of the whole thing. And you can do subcategories. You can say, okay, these are all with kindness with people, these are kindness with dogs, these are with people, then, and this is with machinery. And you can subdivide, and that means that if you're in a situation that's kind of with animals, let's say it's animals rather than dogs, oh, it's a situation with an animal, am I being kind or not? Then you don't have to look at these, you don't have to look at these, you just look at the ones here. So that's a further organization, a further subcategorization that can make things easier. In your notes, there's exercise 4.3 about sensitivity to feedback. I'm going to assume that you will check this out on your own. I don't think I'll take time for an exercise. But just on your own, verify or disverify my generalization that the more information you have in there, the better the feedback will be. And you can think about times in your life when you accepted feedback and found it useful and checked it out and so on, or you can just try it out in reality. Take a bunch of your examples out, and then imagine that you're in a situation. Is it easier or harder to get feedback? And I think the point someone made that it's faster with a smaller database is true. Faster is not necessarily more thorough or better. If you only have a few examples, then of course it's quicker to check through those few examples. Or if you only had one example, it's very fast, but it doesn't give you very good information.
I think this concept is more of what I was getting at, or kind of
Mm-hmm.
pointing to
Yeah.
the capability of setting up certain sections
Sure.
for the quality.
Absolutely. Sure. Subcategories make your life easier. Then essentially you have the advantage of a large database and the advantage of a smaller database. Because the smaller database you can check more quickly. Okay? Okay, I want to play with time next. We've been playing with structure and basically how you orient this thing. Now we're going to go inside the content a little bit and ask questions about time. And now some people have a database that's organized by time, that somehow these are sequential, they're actually in order, like in a timeline, or maybe these are earlier, these are middle, these are later, or something like that. But many people don't have a sequential database. I don't. I'm one of these people who can never tell you what happened first, except very important things like marriages and things like that. I got those nailed down. I've got little numbers down in the corner, you know. This is 1981. Okay, I got that one. But otherwise, I have a very chaotic database. Seems to work out pretty well. And you see there's advantages to everything. If there's no time sequence in here, then it's all right now. And that means it's all immediate. And it's all very real. So that's a certain advantage. But there are advantages to examining time. And I'd like to play with somebody and examine time a little bit. And I'll basically do the same kind of thing I did with Anne. Is there somebody who'd be willing to play with me? Preferably, again, someone who has not been through this seminar before. Oh.
Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, you're next. Oh, that's right. We need another mic, don't we? Good. I can have a moment to blow my nose. You wired up yet? Oh, that might be too high. Let's take off your tag, and because that sometimes rustles and makes stuff. Let me just put that over here. And I think maybe right about there would be a little better. I've been doing this for a while. Yeah, there you go. How's that? Good?
Okay.
Okay, great. So tell me a little bit about your database.
It's here on
Okay.
this side.
Okay?
And there's some similarities to Ann's.
Okay.
It comes when it, like the quality of that I'm as part of my self-concept is here.
Okay.
And these and the rest of the database sort of, I don't know, it sort of fades out, and then
Okay.
these come up, and I can see they stick out from one another,
Okay.
and they're in a sequential order.
Okay. But everything in this database is of the quality, is that right? It's just some of them are more prominent? See, she
No.
had a timeline. So she had all her experiences on a timeline, and then only the parts of the
The
elements
quality.
of her qualities popped up.
That's the way
Is
it is. Actually, it's very similar with mine.
Yours is very
Yeah.
similar. Okay, great. Okay, and this representation over here can cycle through. I mean, these various ones can all pop over there like hers.
Mhm, they can.
Okay.
Mhm.
And how about your summary? What's your summary?
I think what I typically do is pick a recent, clear example
Okay.
to summarize these.
Okay. Much the way you do.
Yeah.
Did you guys talk to each other? Did she hypnotize you into doing what she
No,
does?
no, actually, we had a conversation about timelines, though, I don't know, 2 weeks ago or a week ago or something.
Uh-huh. Okay. All right, that's fine. Okay, so you have, like her, a sequential, and it's already sequenced in time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that makes my task a little easier. The first question I want to ask is, do you have any future examples of whatever this quality is?
I'm not sure. I have confidence that there will be future examples, but I don't know if I have them represented.
Okay, let's try it out and see.
Okay.
So you've got all these examples in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine, pick any one of these, particularly maybe a nice prominent one or something like that,
Okay.
and then future pace it into the future.
Okay.
You don't know when it might happen, but just imagine into the future the way we always do,
Mm-hmm.
and put a number of examples into the future.
Right.
Just take a minute or two to do that.
Okay. Okay.
Now, having done that, is there any difference between before doing it and after doing it in relation to your feeling of the solidity or the truth of that quality in you?
Actually, what happened when I did it in the future is I think I get better at it.
Okay? You get better at the quality.
Yeah. Actually, I'm doing
time-
two qualities. One is with people, and the other is a sort of a solo experience. But
Okay.
yes, I'm getting better at both.
Okay? Now, that sounds to me like it feels more real to you. If you can see yourself in the future getting even better at it,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't that make it more solid?
Yes.
Okay. Now, imagine you take all those future pictures away and just tuck them away somewhere.
Okay.
And then then how do you, it's not as good, is it?
Mm-mm. No.
Now, something like a third of people don't make future examples of their quality. They don't project into the future and future pace them. It makes a huge, huge difference. And it makes a difference in a number of ways. Number one, it makes a difference in the feeling of solidity. As he said, you can keep improving what you do as you go into the future. You can say, well, maybe I could dress that up a little bit. Maybe I could do it a little more subtly or a little more strongly or whatever it is
Mhm.
that you want to improve it. So you can always improve on whatever it is. What's the other one? I've lost it now. Oh, you're making a prediction about the future. When you make a prediction about the future, you're more likely to notice whether you fulfill that or not. If you make a future pace example of being kind to your mother-in-law or something like that, then when you meet your mother-in-law in real life and you find out, did I do it or not? That's a real way to make the feedback happen. You make a prediction, maybe in a particular context or with a particular person, about how you're going to be, and then it's really easy to recognize whether you met your expectations or not.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Let's go on to the next one. As you look at these examples in time,
Mhm.
and if you didn't already have them in time, I would ask, if you had, let's say, you had a collage and they were all jumbled like mine, I would say scan through there and notice what vague time frame each one is. You know, it's just childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and so on. But he's got them all spread out already, so it makes it easier. As you look at those examples, are they spread out evenly in time, or is there a bunch here and a bunch here and a gap here or something like that? Just kind of scan through there.
One of them is pretty consistent. This is the one I'm doing with people, or
Okay.
another person or persons.
Uh-huh.
The other one is a little more sporadic because the opportunity for that experience is connected to certain context, and that context doesn't always come
Okay.
up.
Okay.
So they're a little
certain
more-
periods of life,
Yeah,
you weren't
present
in
that context more
Okay.
frequently. Yeah,
All right. So that's totally appropriate.
right.
Okay. So given that, let's see, the one is pretty even, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, imagine that, I don't know just what period of your life this is, but I just arbitrarily goes ka-chunk like this. What if
Okay.
you took out the examples from that period of your life and set them aside, and then just notice what that's like?
It feels like some very significant thing got lost.
Yeah. Do you feel less confident of that quality? Because that's what I'm always asking along right now, at least this period of time, is how can we make this stronger? How can we experiment to find out, does this make it stronger or weaker?
I'm ambivalent about
Okay.
answering that question.
Okay.
It could make it stronger in the sense that the contrast is so huge, it would be a motivation not to lose that again.
Okay. All right.
Does that make
People
sense?
can do, yeah, it does. People can do all these wonderful things with their brains. Now, what if you'd never known about those? I mean, you know now that there's a chunk missing, right?
Yeah.
And that creates the contrast. It's like there's something missing that ought to be there.
Mhm.
But what if you just had never really thought about that period of your life in terms of this quality? I'm asking a what-if question, or
Yeah, and
an as-if question, so it's a little hard.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time doing that for
Yeah.
some reason. It doesn't compute or something.
Okay. Well, again, the generalization is if you have lots of examples spread out through time, it's going to give you more power, more strength. There are some people who, for instance, were great athletes when they were in high school or college or something like that, and later on they're not very athletic at all. Some of them think that they're very athletic because they have this rich database for a period of 4, 6, 8 years, something like that, and they don't notice that from here on
They have.
there wasn't much. You know, the ex-athletes. How many of you encountered one of those? They're always talking about their big athletic skills or something like that. And recently you haven't seen them do anything more than get up out of the sofa to get a beer or something like that. And that's what I'm going after in this. If you have things that are spread out throughout your life, this is one of the things that builds that continuity. I spoke of the continuity across space and across time. Across space, we'll get to soon, but across time right now, if you have examples from birth and all the way up to your present age, then it's really true of you. It's something that happens throughout your life, even though you made all those changes, even though you grew up and your hair changed color and all these different things happen, still it's very true of you, who you are as a person. Make sense?
Yeah.
Any questions
good
about
sense.
that? Okay. Now I want you to take another close look at some of these examples here and ask yourself, what's the chunk size of time involved? Let's pick any one example here. Does it matter moments, minutes, days, weeks, months, years? And the content of the quality could matter could have an impact on this. If it's something like spontaneity, it's going to be a fairly small chunk size. It's like that momentary creativity and so on.
So how long does the quality last in that experience? Is that what you're asking about?
Yeah, if you pick any one of these, how long did it last? And as I say, this will vary with the quality, because if the quality is persistence, then it's going to be a longer time frame
Right.
than spontaneity.
There's
probably.
actually variation in that, because sometimes it can be an instantaneous or a very fleeting thing,
Okay,
and other times it's sustained over an hour or 2 or 3.
okay,
So,
great.
yeah.
Now, play with adjusting these. What if one of these lasted for a day or two?
It would be a little exhausting, I think.
Okay, yeah, some things would be. Okay, and we're playing deliberately without content, right? Because I don't want to distract you with content.
Right.
For some things, it would be inappropriate to have a day or two. For other things, it would be entirely appropriate to have a month or two. You could be caring for somebody and being very kind to them and taking care of them while they're sick, and it could last for many, many months. Spontaneity or excitement could be a little exhausting. So there are going to be content variations in this. But just imagine, you said some were moments momentarily, some were
Longer, 2 or 3 hours.
2 or 3 hours,
Yeah,
okay?
time.
What if you had only the momentary ones, the little moments? Imagine you took out all that. You're shaking your head.
Yeah, that
wouldn't be so good, would it?
No, that wouldn't be very convincing to me.
Would not be very convincing. Okay, what if you had only the ones that went for several hours?
I think the variation in context is more convincing. The fact that it doesn't just show up here, but it shows up in these smaller ones and the larger ones, provides me evidence a little of more durability.
Okay, so somehow the variation in time is important to you. And do you have any idea how that works? How is it that having both momentary and very short ones and some lasting hours provides more validity somehow to this quality?
Well, it has to do with consistency in this particular case. So, I mean, this quality could be evoked in just a moment, just in a passing event,
right?
Or it could be evoked and have to be sustained, actually, to be true over a longer period of time.
So it's nice to have both.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it is. There are advantages to both. As one person expressed it, if I can express it in a moment and I also know that I can do it over a period of time, then I can be free to express it in a moment, knowing that I can continue or not continue. If I had only the long ones, then I would be very hesitant to commit myself.
Yeah.
Because I would be I'd be saying, if I express this, then I have to do it for a long time.
Right.
And having the freedom to have both. And this would vary somewhat between contents, of course. Okay, now let's try the reverse. Well, no, let's see. How do I do this? I need to pause for a moment. If you examine one of those that went for hours, was every moment of those, let's say 2 hours, was every moment of that 2 hours expressing that quality?
No.
Great. Now, just to play, take that 2 hours and sort of divide it up into smaller pieces. And which ones of those actually expressed that quality and which ones didn't? And I don't need to know about it. I just want you to play with it a little bit. See, people speak of having a bad day or a good moment or a good relationship or a not good relationship. And they're doing huge generalizations and can be used to chunk down and go inside that and go, well, what little pieces in here were actually expressing this quality and which weren't? Is that interesting?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And for me to evaluate it that way, it doesn't have to be every instant.
No.
But probably, I don't know what the percent would be, 70% maybe.
Okay, great, sure. Part of the time you're just going to the bathroom or getting a glass of water or something like
Yeah.
that and weren't really expressing the quality.
Right.
Now try the reverse. Take one of that, let's say the 1 to 2 hours,
Mm-hmm.
and think about, can you spread it farther? Let me give you an idea of what I mean. Let's say for 2 hours you were being very caring or loving or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that if you look in the time previous and the time after, you found that in the time previous you were thinking about how you were going to be with this person, which is really also an expression of that quality.
Mm-hmm.
And then afterwards you were thinking over the experience that you had, which is again also an experience of that quality. In other words, at first I asked you to chunk down smaller.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm suggesting try chunking larger, just to see what that does, how you experience that. And this may not always be appropriate either, but I want to give you a sense of what I'm going after, because it's one more thing to check. It's one more thing to play with.
You know, it's like this is always available.
Uh-huh.
It's latent.
Yeah.
Maybe that would be a good way to say it.
Okay.
And during the 2 hours, I activate it probably 70% of the time.
Okay.
And just because I'm not actively engaged in it doesn't mean it's just
It's still
latent.
part of you.
Yeah.
Still part of who you are. Absolutely. And one of the ways that makes it part of who you are is having a variation in time chunk and what I call time spreading. That, you know, just as in the original 2 hours you go, well, it was really only about 70%, but
Mm-hmm.
you essentially said, I had this quality this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. It's wonderful. As long as it doesn't mislead you or get you into some situation that's awkward or something like that. It's wonderful to lie to yourself this way. And if it works for you, why not lie to yourself even more? Which is what you're doing when you say it's always latent.
Right.
Well, I mean, is it really latent? Well, I don't know. I don't care. It works. For him to say it's always latent, I can always do this, is wonderful because it gives you that sense of who you are, not just what you do. The old difference between behavior and identity, or self and behavior, that many of you have encountered. When it's part of yourself, it's who you are, and that provides like a foundation to go forth into the world and do whatever it is you want to do and reach whatever goals you want to reach.
Mm-hmm.
It's wonderful.
It's a good
Okay.
lie.
Thanks very much. Oh, do you have any questions? I want you all to do this real soon, but if you have any specific questions of him.
I think it's more just the last point about the spreading of I think we all have significant moments,
Mm-hmm.
maybe very short in real time and seem really big and bold and bright because
Sure, absolutely.
because
There are
of power.
certain experiences or landmarks and so on.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, thanks a lot. I still think you guys are in cahoots, though, with having the same structure. That's not fair at all. Okay. I'm assuming that you all have past experiences of whatever the quality is, but notice what a big difference putting in future ones have. How many of you had future ones already? Only 2. Wow. Putting in those future ones is real pizzazz. That really adds a huge chunk to the solidity of this. Forecast yourself into the future. Imagine being tenacious in the future, or kind, or loyal, or whatever it is. That really adds to your database, and you have unlimited future, which means you can add lots and lots and lots of future ones in here.
I tried it out, but then put it back.
You didn't want to have future ones?
Oh, it was cool. but
Okay.
then I just put it back. I said, oh, I'll check this out a little bit later.
Oh, okay.
But I did check it out. So I'll go in the future, throw some out there.
Uh-huh.
And, I mean, it was cool,
Yeah.
but it's, yeah.
Well, it's a great way to really...
Put it back.
Why did you want to put it back?
Because I put them out there, but then they weren't like, they didn't happen yet.
Yeah.
So So, I mean,
It's waiting to.
So, I mean,
Are you sure?
it's possible, but, you know, I was like, oh, that's cool, that's kind of
Well,
cool.
I sense a hesitation in you to, you don't want to attribute those to too much reality, right? Because they haven't happened yet. Great, color code them. Those are light blue or light pink or something like that, so that you know that those are future guesses, essentially. But they can really add to your database. You know, it really is cool, because then you're projecting yourself out into the future. And for some people, it's very, very important because they may not have had a bunch in their past. They may not have a rich database of past experiences of this, especially if they're making some change. They're making some life change and they want to be different in the future, then they will rely even more on these future examples.
That's the thing, I had a huge database
Mm-hmm.
for it, so it's just, it'll happen.
Okay.
So, I'll
Yeah.
check it out. Maybe I'll check it
Well,
out with
you
something
always
else.
want to respect whatever hesitancies some people might have about going into the future or anything else that we do here. But as long as it's couched in terms of something that doesn't interfere with what's already going on, that's useful, why not? Go for it. So that's the past, present, future. The present for some people is just a little knife edge between the past and the future. For other people, the present is a little bit wider. But basically, are your examples spread out in time? And particularly, that's the distribution in time. If you find a big gap, that could be a time to reach into your memories and find examples. And sometimes people find that things were labeled differently. One gal was doing creativity or something like that, and she found that during her adolescent years, her mother did not consider that creativity. She considered it something entirely different. But when she thought about it, there were a number of behaviors that were very, very creative. Her mother didn't like them, that's all. And so she had another name for them. So naming is sometimes a problem. And by filling in those years of adolescence, she could then have more of a sense of continuity, that creativity was a part of her throughout her life. So anytime there are gaps in there, it can be useful. Now, if there's something like you suggested, that there were certain contexts were just not available in certain periods of your life, that may be totally appropriate to have some gaps. Or you could think about that quality and how could you exhibit that quality even though those contexts were not available, even though there was some other context, and that way you could fill in some examples there. So these, again, are something else to play with. You had a question?
Yeah. How can I play with the timeline with one or two examples?
Yeah. For this purpose, I would suggest you pick some other quality where you have more examples. Just take a moment to think of some other quality that's true of you where you can think, oh yeah, I got lots of examples of that. Because otherwise it won't be easy for you to experience some of these things that I'm trying to point out here. And that's my goal here, of course, is not to just feed you a bunch of information, but to have you actually experiment with these things and verify that it makes a difference. Because then you'll never forget them. And if it's just words, they're real easy to forget. So then there's the chunk size of time. You simply notice, well, gosh. See, this example, this was about 1 minute. This one was more like an hour, et cetera, et cetera. Or if you already got them on time, the way Jim is it? The way Jim did, then you can just notice, well, how big are these things, you know? And notice, and then play a little bit with pulling some of them out or making some of them longer or some of them shorter, and just adjusting this, because this is part of what makes this thing spread through time, is how you think about it in time and how you select. You see, when you say, well, there was this one that was about 1 minute long, that's kind of arbitrary. How did you decide when this thing began and when it ended? This is called punctuation. Where do you decide when a sentence begins and ends? One of the hardest things in learning a new language is all these sounds are coming at you, and you don't know where the words end and begin. And sometimes it's kind of arbitrary. And our experiences are the same kind of thing. When did you start being loving with this particular person? And then try chunking it down. So if this is one of those experiences, ah yes, in this experience I was loving. And then go, well, here I wasn't really being loving. Here I was, and here I was, and here I was taking off my shoes or something else, and I wasn't really being loving at the moment. And here I was staring out the window and so on. And just chunk down and go, well, what part of this was I actually being loving? Make finer distinctions. And then do the reverse. Then pick one chunk like this, and rather than going inside it, go, well, if I go into the future, what followed that and what came before that, well, actually, you know, I could consider all of this being loving. And just try playing with the chunk size of the incidents that you have. And that's what I'd like you to play with for a little while. And again, I'd like you to do this in trios, and do the thing where you play mostly inside and then come out and share. So the three of us would sit down for 5 or 6, 7 minutes. We'd just go inside and play with these things, and then come out and talk and just share your experiences. And it's been, good grief, 3:20 already? We need a break. How about a 10-minute break and 15-minute exercise? I'll see you at 1:45.